Good morning or afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. Very excited to have everybody here today. We at Heroku are very happy to welcome Goosehead and Forrester for a fireside chat style discussion. Before I get started, I would like to start with this forward-looking statement. Just a reminder, Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and customers should base their purchasing on products and services that are currently available. With that, I'd like to hand this over to Gabrielle.
Hi, my name is Gabriel Avila. I'm a customer success manager with Heroku. I've been working with Goosehead for about 2 years now. Excited to host the Fireside Chat. Today we have Brim Basom, VP of Enterprise Solutions Data and AI for Goosehead, and we have Kara Luk, a consultant for the Total Economic Impact Study from Forrester.
Hey, thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Kim, for the intros. Thank you, everybody, for joining this call today. I know everybody's got busy schedules with work, and carving out time is not always easy. So thank you very much for joining this call. We're excited to talk to you guys today. With Goosehead Insurance, you may or may not have heard of Goosehead, but we are the fastest growing publicly traded personal lines insurance agency in the US. Our focus is on choice, cost, and convenience to simplify the insurance shopping. Our main business lines are home, auto, flood, umbrella. You can go to goosehead.com if you're ever interested in getting a quote and checking out that experience. Founded in 2003 and have a lot of strategic insider ownership of the organization, and we're also publicly traded. You can follow us on GSHD online with stock symbol. I want to show you guys this slide. This is a growth story, right? Over 10 years, 42% CAGR. You can see in 2003, pretty gradual growth. And then in 2020, hit 1 billion in annual policies in force. And then we've been launching digital projects moving forward through 2021, 2022. And it's really just been kind of a rocket ship moving forward for us. Double-digit growth every year. So it's exciting to be part of. We're also investing a ton in technology. We're being very nimble, even though we're a larger organization. So we're really heavy on innovation and willing to move quickly and address needs across the business. So it's an exciting time being here for the past 3 years and really tripling the size of the team that we have on the tech side and bringing in a lot of really solid partners like the Heroku team to help continue and fast track our growth going forward. Couple of things, proprietary technology stack. So we have a utility patent we file for several of these tools. But one of our biggest things is our referral partner discovery tool. So we have a very large network of referral partners, over 40,000, that we've been working on for 20 plus years. So think of real estate agents, brokers, underwriters. So our core business is very, one-to-one, very personal. We obviously have online traffic as well, but we don't do any online paid media or advertising like some of the bigger brands you see out there. So all of that growth has really grown from grassroots and just our online and our quality of product. We've also built several end-to-end quoting solutions like Aviator. So Aviator is an agent-facing tool that enables them to quote up to 150 plus carriers. We own that entire pipeline. We own the entire experience. So it's really helped us to enable us to move quicker and faster as demand changes and give our clients tons of choice when it comes to what they're looking for in the marketplace. We also built out what we call a quote to issue, which allows our agents and clients to fully bind a policy through a digital experience. That's going from RC1 to RC3 on the carrier side, fully booked, fully bound with a carrier. So tons of investments around that product and solution, which will be the future for us moving forward. As we continue to expand on that and make it easier and add more carriers. We also have our digital agent, which is one of our first online products that we launched, which is directly client facing. So if you go to goosehead.com and go to a quote, you're going to hit our digital agent and you can quote home and auto in under 2 minutes. So, that's really our organic traffic comes in, and also for sending partner leads and referral leads over to that marketplace. So exciting times at Goosehead. So excited to talk about some of the things we've done with Heroku. Hopefully you guys have some good takeaways from that.
Thanks, Brim. Very cool stuff. So can you share any specific Goosehead needs or challenges that led to the decision to use Heroku as a platform of choice?
Sure. So I think we've been a long time Salesforce partner, right? Over 10 plus years with Salesforce core platform. We also have MuleSoft, we have Tableau, right? So Heroku was somewhat of a natural fit, right? Being in that ecosystem. But one of the biggest drivers is really around security, compliance, scalability, and data protection, right? When we first rolled out Heroku, we really wanted something that was going to be able to support us not just now, but in the future, right? I've also been in environments where I've managed, full data centers, colo locations, AWS, like all the endpoints, hundreds of VMs, right? But we really wanted something that was going to minimize the DevOps needs and really allow us to focus on building the applications and less worried about the core infrastructure, right? So when we started with Heroku, we started with a Heroku private space, which was great. We had a handful of developers. Now we got 10 plus Scrum teams. We're going to have over 100 full-time dev as we ramp up into next year. And so being on Heroku and then moving to Heroku Shield gave us all those security and compliance needs. Heroku Shield, is PCI level 1 certified, HIPAA certified, GDPR. All of those tool sets allow me not to worry about that core infrastructure, right? It's also fully encrypted. So my teams can focus on just building the apps of the future for Goosehead. So that was, it's easy to maintain. We're able to actually leverage all the components. It's scalable, right? Across the dynos, across the database. And it kind of just allows us to think more strategic and have a very minimal DevOps team that can support that, right? Now you still have to do the DevOps, and you still have to be very proactive about monitoring your applications, what kind of performance you're doing, right? But I don't need an army to do that. I can do that with a much smaller team. It has also allowed us to build quicker. I mentioned the Aviator platform earlier. So, we're quoting 95% of our insurance quotes across that platform, right? That's 150 plus carriers. So we were able to easily increase load by 10x with no problems. When we fully rolled out Aviator in the new tech stack, we saw 55% faster response times, and we saw basically 80% total reduction in quote time, right? So, our business is selling insurance. So the faster we can quote, get people bound, we can move to the next one, right? So it's really important that our apps are highly available and they're also scalable for us moving forward.
Very impressive stuff you guys have done at Goosehead. Can you talk about the learning curve, excuse me, with Heroku? You mentioned previously IaaS and now you're moving to a PaaS. Can you talk about that a little bit for you and your team?
Yeah, I think if you think about, accelerated innovation or kind of learning path, right? I mean, with Heroku, it really allows us to have quick feature deployment with minimal setup, right? If I'm ramping up, and let's say I'm, investing a ton of money in new software and technology, then I'm also going to onboard resources, right? So when I'm onboarding new resources in the tech stack, I've got a new full stack engineer. We're able to really dial in that ramp up time with some of our, core platform AI tools on the dev side, plus with Heroku, in basically around a week, right? It's not some complex process. We get to understand how things get deployed to Heroku, how the environment works. So it really helps us to stay agile and, and move quickly for, change to market, or if we need to change something strategically with our business, but also ramping up developers, right? Like I want to be able to take on a developer and get to high velocity throughput with that resource as soon as possible, right? So I don't want some extensive onboarding process. So it's really helped from that side, Gabriel, to really help us just onboard that new teams and kind of not have to think about it a whole lot. That makes sense.
Absolutely. I hear you're talking about the speed of innovation. Very important stuff. You mentioned and how we got to work together is I'm a CSM for Heroku. I come with a Heroku signature support. Can you talk about that experience a little bit, working with your team, how you've seen the benefit of us working together, myself with you and with your team?
Sure. So I think, and I've been in the space a long time in technology, 20 plus years, right? So a lot of people love to complain about technology, right? Oh, this vendor, that vendor, right? SaaS tools that are out there, right? But you always have to look at, are you leveraging the tools appropriately? And do you have the right level of support? I've seen so many times where people aren't engaged with the vendor appropriately, they're not using the tech stack appropriately, and they're complaining about it, right? It's easy to do that. So one of the things that I always want to focus on is making sure that whatever tools we have, we are maximizing the usage and we have the right support model, right? So that was one of the things when I came in, let's move to signature support. Let's make sure that we're fully engaged with a Heroku team and our extended Salesforce team to know that we have, kind of boots on the ground. And, those team members are truly bought in kind of what we're doing, what is the vision, because it's much more intertwined with our day-to-day business. There's a lot of touch points. They understand our current challenges and where we want to go. It also really helps out with issue resolution, right? So stuff's going to break, things are going to come up, right? That's natural. But we saw about a 75% faster time to resolution on tickets, questions that come up because there's a direct point of contact. SLAs are very fast. So that helps us reduce any outage time to our quoting, our agents, which is critical, right? Because if we're not quoting, then we're not selling. So high uptime, optimal availability is really important. It's like an insurance policy. Like, we're selling insurance, but it's like an insurance policy with your SaaS partners to make sure you're truly engaged with them the right way. It also helps out when any questions come up with like security, compliance, which is why we're in the Shield as well. So between Shield and support, we're really covered from like a best in class, like feature set on the technology side and best in class support. So between those two, we've been able to move really quick, Gabriel, and pivot as needed.
Love to hear it. And for me, it's really fun to watch you guys do this stuff and bring these products to market. Um, can you talk about the top 3 benefits you and your team have experienced on the Heroku Pass?
Sure. I think, if you're looking at like, really boosting one of the top things is client partner engagement and trust, right? Because we're on Heroku Shield, that environment is fully encrypted, right? It has all of the appropriate tooling and security measures around it. So like we're going to work with partners or we're looking to onboard, integrate, if it's another financial services company. I mean, there's a lot of compliance things, right? I've gone through and filled out massive cybersecurity documents, right, to onboard partners, right? So having that conversation and understanding what that tech stack looks like is a much easier conversation, being the fact that like, hey, we're on Shield, here's all the things that you have. So that's a really big thing, right? Enhancing security, right, and future-proofing us. I think just, opening up other opportunities, where I think if we had something that was more like homegrown, we'd be even limited on what we could integrate with and what we could go forward with, integrate with other partners. And then I think just overall, like you're accelerating, right, what you can do innovation-wise. I can onboard developers quickly and I can really have them just focus on building my new applications. So we need that flexibility, right? As the market changes, we've got to pivot. So that's been really good. And I think too, like Heroku is enabling us for the future, right? I mean, everybody's talking about AI, agent adoption. We're looking into obviously MCP, model context protocol engagements, building out those agent-based API endpoints, right, inside of the Heroku environment. So that's going to allow us to expand and be flexible as the market changes, right? As commerce becomes more agent to agent, and you've got more and more AI tools, working together, if it's like quoting insurance or whatever else it might be. But being able to have that flexibility to build out that architecture inside of Heroku is also going to be critical for us.
Great answer. Thank you. One thing I've noticed is very interesting about Goosehead is you have both your customers, the people you insure, and the agents you work with, essentially different customer bases. Can you talk about the feedback from those different folks, how that works, and how that motivates where you go next?
Sure, that's a great question, Gabriel. I mean, you do have to look at like your different personas, right? So we've been very heavily focused on our agents and our internal operations, right? That's the Aviator tool you see there, right? In the last year and a half, over 5,000 enhancements have come in, right? That we deployed that tool to enhance and streamline quoting, make it easier, a better client experience, right? A better agent experience, right? We're trying to grow the business. So that's been really important for us to focus on. And then just looking towards the future and what we want to do with our consumer facing, right? There's a lot of things in the consumer marketplace that kind of look like you're getting an insurance quote, but really it's being farmed out for like lead generation. We want to own that end to end where, you're able to come and truly get that choice cost convenience model. And you're just saying, hey, what is the best product for me, right? Like we want the consumer to have the best product available, right? That meets their needs. So really being able to expand that. So we have we're going to be expanding that drastically in FY26 to kind of empower consumers and clients to make better choices. And so those things all lead into like our partner network, right? And who is coming to us, right? So there's also partners we work with on financial services that are also lead generation partners and sharing those leads. So we want that experience to be better as well, right? So if they're sending a lead over, they're able to convert, they're getting a great experience, not just on the online side through the tooling, but also after they convert from service as well.
Great answer. Thank you. And so now we'll speak a little bit with Kara. Hi, Kara.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I can
Awesome.
give a quick intro to myself just before we get into things here. Yeah, it's nice to be here today. I'm Kara, and I'm a consultant on Forrester's Total Economic Impact team. And I have been leading this study on Heroku that I'm excited to share the results of today.
Looking forward to hearing it. Forrester was recently commissioned to conduct a study about the total economic impact of Heroku. Can you tell us more about how the study was conducted, please?
Yes. Just advance the slide. So I'll start with a quick introduction as to what is a TEI study, for those who may not be familiar with it. So in addition to conducting market research at Forrester, we also conduct custom research. And the total economic impact, or TEI, is one of these pieces of custom research that we like to say is a consistent, proven, and repeatable way to evaluate and justify technology investments. And Forrester has been using this methodology for nearly 25 years. So in a TEI study, we do everything included in an ROI analysis, but we take things a step further by incorporating risk and flexibility into our evaluation. And what I think really sets a TEI study apart is that we do our analysis grounded in real world data, right? So we base everything on interviews with actual customers who have practical experience using a solution. So let's take a look at the foundation of this study, which is the customer interviews. So we spoke with 4 organizations using Heroku, and they spanned industries like manufacturing, software, and financial services. And the diversity of these organizations helped us capture a broad view of how Heroku is being used across environments and was able to address a wide range of business needs.
Wow, great graphic. Can you walk us through the main challenges customers were facing before Heroku and what led them to choose Heroku?
Yeah. Definitely. And I think some of these pieces here will sort of reflect back on items that Brim has mentioned earlier in terms of his business needs, right? So we asked each customer what life was like before adopting Heroku and their specific pain points. And what customers said was that before Heroku, their organizations leveraged and evaluated a variety of infrastructures and tools to build, deploy, and manage their applications. And from those experiences, 4 consistent pain points emerged. So the first was obviously infrastructure complexity. The interviewees reported that their organization's prior application infrastructures and other solutions that they were evaluating were overly complex and would have required significant effort to set up and maintain their apps and products on. And then the second was developer efficiency and the need to optimize that developer effort. So teams wanted their developers focused on building features, but in reality, a lot of time would have been spent on DevOps tasks like configuring environments and managing data services. And the common sentiment we heard across customers was that they were losing valuable developer resources to DevOps work that constantly needed attention. And then the third was data integration. So several customers mentioned that integrating and managing data services like Postgres and Redis would have required additional efforts to set up and maintain. And then ultimately, all of these pieces led to the last challenge we see here, which is time to value. Speed is obviously critical, but infrastructure was slowing the customers down. So whether it was launching a new product or needing to respond to an emerging business opportunity, the time to configure and manage infrastructure components as well as security controls led to bottlenecks that impacted time to market. So then, the second piece of Gabriel's question here is why did these customers choose Heroku? And across the interviews, a few key reasons stood out. The first was Heroku's managed infrastructure and data services. Let me click to the next slide here. So customers shared that one of the primary reasons they chose Heroku was because it offered managed infrastructure and data service offerings, which reduced operational complexity as well as accelerated time to market. So instead of spending weeks configuring infrastructure, teams could get up and running quickly. And then second was scalability and performance. So organizations also valued the ability to scale with demand, whether they were handling spikes in user activity or expanding capacity as their businesses grew. The Dino-based architecture allowed teams to adjust quickly as well as maintain consistent performance levels. And then the last was ease of use. So Heroku offered a developer-friendly platform with easy-to-use tools for managing workflows, environment variables, and monitoring that performance as well. So all of these factors contributed to the decision in choosing Heroku.
Great insights. So once customers started using Heroku, what kind of results did they see in terms of benefits and like broader business value?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at these benefits here. So based on the insights from the interviews, we quantified 3 core areas of impact and then applied those benefits to what we call a composite organization, which is a representative company that is modeled based on the profiles of the customers that we spoke with. And this helps us translate the individual outcomes into a broader financial picture. So let's start with development efficiency. What we heard was that Heroku streamlined developer workflows by simplifying app deployments, streamlining testing processes, and enabling easier integration of data services. And as a result, interviewees reported that their developer teams had more capacity for building apps and features, leading to increased velocity. And based on the interviews, we modeled a 40% increase in productivity for development workflows. And then the next is DevOps efficiency. So Heroku offloaded several activities from dev teams like container provisioning and environment configuration. And we also heard that it significantly reduced the efforts associated with managing security and compliance and performance. And this translated into a 35% reduction in DevOps toil, freeing up additional resources to focus on development work. And then the last quantified benefit is incremental profit from innovations. So Heroku enabled customers to respond to business opportunities more effectively and drive outcomes like revenue growth and operational efficiency. And with Heroku, customers reported that the time to value had increased by up to 50% in some cases. And this allowed them to essentially get their apps into production several months sooner and deliver richer feature sets. So for our composite organization, this translated to $12 million in annual top-line revenue growth. Okay, so what does that all add up to here? So when we apply the quantified benefits to our composite organization, the results were compelling. Over a 3-year period, Heroku delivered almost $5 million in total benefits. And then after accounting for the costs, that resulted in a net present value, or essentially net benefits, of $3.7 million and an ROI of 286%. So then also beyond sort of the financial metrics that we looked at in the study, there were highlights that customers shared that, while not quantified, were still really impactful for their organizations. And I can go through each one of these quickly here. So the first is customer experience and satisfaction. Like Brim mentioned before, Heroku really helps deliver better digital experiences. For example, one customer told me that Heroku helped them build self-service apps for their customers, which ultimately led to higher satisfaction scores as well as loyalty. And then also security was a major theme. Features like Shield and private spaces enabled the customers to reduce risk, protect sensitive data, and be able to uphold their regulatory requirements with minimal overhead. And then Heroku Connect was also a highlight. They leveraged it to synchronize data between their apps and Salesforce, enabling them to push data in and out of Salesforce in near real time to support workflow automation in the Salesforce platform. And then finally, we heard about code quality and upskilling. So what we heard was that developers primarily recaptured their productivity gains from Heroku by writing more code. But one customer also told me that they had more time to focus on improving code quality and experimenting with new frameworks and tools.
Very interesting facts. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
one more piece here. I just wanted to sort of zoom out on the bigger picture before I close out. And I think what's really important beyond the financial results is that, you know, in these conversations, what stood out to me was how Heroku was helping future-proof their organizations, right? So it not only helped them overcome immediate challenges, but provided a platform with the flexibility to support the needs of their organizations in the long term. And I think the two quotes here really nicely drive that sentiment home. You know, the sky's the limit. That's awesome. Okay, cool. I'll pass it back to you, Gabriel.
Very cool stuff. Thank you. Let's go back to Brim for a sec. In your findings and decision to ultimately decide on Heroku as your platform of choice, what concerns did you have around scalability and growth, given current status for Goosehead and then for the future of Goosehead as well?
Yeah, I think that was something we really had to look at, Gabriel, right? Because the planning, right, around what we're doing is looking 3 to 5 years out, right? So that was one of the reasons why I decided to move to Shield very early on, right? At the time, we didn't need to be on Shield. We're like, hey, you know what? We're going to grow. We're going to be in a position where we really need additional compliance and security. So we made that investment early, right? So I think for anybody on here, I mean, you've got to start thinking farther down the path of where you want to get to, right? And kind of build that environment. So you're not having to like re-engineer things later on, right? And you continue to focus on the build components, right? Also, Heroku is very easy to spin up dynos and like quickly deploy apps. So it allows you to do like very easy proof of concepts, right? How you spin this up, test it out, right? And then you can take that proof of concept and you can operationalize it, right? And we know that, hey, I can scale a database, I can scale the dynos, I can add more capacity. So it just helps us remove that being a risk. What we're doing is not part of the conversation, right? Like we know we can scale, right? So we know we can track our apps. We know our current apps can easily scale the way they're built. So I think just having that peace of mind as we move forward, Gabriel, is just really important.
Great answer. Thank you. I believe this brings us to QA. Awesome.
Yes,
Okay.
we've got some questions from the audience. And I believe this first question is for Brim. Do you have any preferred monitoring tools, both for monitoring outages, issues, or SIEM for security? If so, can you talk about how the process of initial setup and onboarding?
Sure. Yeah, I think if I go back to like kind of ground zero, right? There's pretty much no monitoring. There was really no DevOps process. It was a very small team. Hey, we're building stuff. Let's try it out and see if it'll scale, right? I mean, we did some initial performance testing and some of the base applications were breaking with like 10 plus users, which is obviously not going to work going forward, right? So you can be very intentional about building in those DevOps monitoring tools, right? So we've invested a ton in. We do have a DevOps engineering team, right? We've got dedicated roles and capacity to really focus on those things, right? So one of the tooling specifically we use is New Relic. So New Relic allows us to ingest all types of information and logging. So we're able to get an idea on like, how is our app performing, right? And so I want to be able to see that baseline, my app can scale 10 plus X, right? With the number of users, right? So we're constantly monitoring that. We also have a monthly metrics meeting. So I think you've got to have dedicated time where like, you're sitting with a team and you're walking through those metrics, right? Hey, what's working? What's not working? Holding people accountable, right? You also we do a lot of things that are client facing, also agent facing. So there's tools you can use to deploy to do your session replay. So we use LogRocket, which captures every session, right? So I can go in and watch every session that occurs in the application, right? So sometimes that's really valuable as well because you have some more front-end type reporting you can do. You can also drill into a user session if they saw weird behavior with the application. So you do want to look at it holistically, right? And there's always the next level. So I would just say, get a list of priorities, get a backlog of things you need to do, right? Force rank those and start working through them, right? Because there's always the next thing you want to do, right? Like one of the things we want to do is move to real-time deployments, basically. Instead of deploying every couple of weeks, we want to be able to deploy during the day, anytime. Right, so that's going to involve canary type deployments, right? Leveraging Cloudflare and Heroku so we can basically, deploy at will. So there's always that next step in automation. So we're kind of continuing to build on those building blocks, but make sure you have a really solid foundation to start from, and then just work your way up.
Great. Thank you. Question for Gabrielle. Is Heroku compatible with Agentforce?
Absolutely. That's for me, right? Yeah, absolutely. We have a bunch of cool stuff coming out. I can put some links in the chat for further, but we're absolutely integrated. Heroku is the AI pass. We have various things, managed inference agents, model context protocol servers. I'll send some links in the chat.
We'll also be sure to add some of those to the follow-up email that we'll send after this session. Okay, another question for Brim. Being an insurance company, any tips on how do you manage the risk involved with your Heroku DevOps process and the deployed results?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, uptime availability is really important, right? So I think it's making sure you've got segregation of duties, right? You don't have a developer also testing, also deploying the code, right? So, when you're very small, you kind of like work in a startup, right? You just do everything. It's one person, I do everything. This doesn't scale at enterprise level. I've worked with some Fortune 100 companies, so you have to put the processes in place that make sense for the size of your organization, right? To allow you to be flexible. But as you grow, it gets more difficult. So I think, we've really built some strict processes, right? Of like, hey, here's a dev team, here's QA, here's sign off, right? Then it goes to an actual DevOps team for deployment, right? So we have those checks and balances to try to remediate any risks. The reality is stuff will break, right? You're going to have issues. That's just the nature of doing software development, right? But you're trying to mitigate those issues. You also want to be very proactive in your monitoring, right? So there's been multiple times where we're so close to our apps right now and our monitoring is so dialed in, we will see an issue with a vendor or a third party before it's announced, right? We'll see that immediately, right? And then an hour later, there's an outage notification, right? On, I work with 100+ vendors, right? So it could be anybody. But being really close to your apps and truly understanding the health of that is so critical, right? So you can just move quickly and also remediate when issues do come up. We've done a lot of work around feature flagging in our application as well. So hey, if we're deploying a new feature, it's behind a feature flag. That way, if something is a challenge with that, right, we can just turn that feature off, right, without having to do a full code deployment. So there's some things there that can really help you be a little quicker and more nimble moving forward and minimize impact.
Fantastic, thank you. I have a question for Kara. How can I apply the findings of the TEI for my organization?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think the best place to start is by sort of reviewing the key challenges and the sort of customer journey points within our study. And then sort of ask yourself, are these familiar? Do they resonate with you? And if they do, there's a good chance that the findings in the study are going to be relevant for your organization. So I guess from there, I would say the next step would be to use the percentages in the study. We also have very detailed financial model tables for each of the benefits in the study. And you can use those tables to help estimate the impact that Heroku could have. And then I guess I will also call out that we've developed a really, really cool dynamic calculator asset that essentially enables you to generate a custom ROI based on your company's specific characteristics. And we can add that in as a link in the follow-up as well. But what I will say is, every organization is different and unique. So certainly, reach out to a Heroku rep and they can definitely help you sort of tailor the findings of this study to your specific needs and guide you through the process of sort of applying these results for your own organization.
Thank you. And yes, we'll also include a link to that calculator so that everybody can see how they measure up. Okay, I have another question. This one I'm going to field to both Gabrielle and Brim. So Gabrielle, I'd love for you to speak to this, and Brim, I would love to hear what you think about it as well. Heroku Connect and Heroku App Link are great. Are there any plans to support data cloud functionality like data graph, UDMOs, essentially graph data and unstructured data via API?
I'm not aware specifically of that integration. I do know that Heroku and Data Cloud are both part of Salesforce. I know that there is integration available. I'd have to take that as offline and like get back inside in the follow-up email we do.
Yeah, I mean, it came from my side, right? I mean, we definitely leverage Heroku Connect, right? That is one of the other kind of like benefits, right, of having that deployment, right, and having Salesforce core, So we mainly use Postgres right now for our database, right? But Heroku Connect is a critical part of that. We do have a data cloud infrastructure. Right now, we're more in the kind of setup and kind of like figuring out how we want to fully utilize that tool set. So we haven't dug deep on kind of the hooks for Heroku, but I mean, obviously there's a lot of flexibility with data cloud, how you can use it, how you can deploy it. So I would imagine that those roadmaps are going to be pretty closely aligned moving forward.
Okay. Another question for both of you. Is it possible to use Heroku with another tool to build DevSecOps solution?
Yeah, I saw this one. If you're still in the audience, Nikhil, could you maybe mention some specifics? We do have a lot of functionality. I just want to make sure I'm addressing whatever your question is.
Maybe in the meantime.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a couple. I mean, I can jump in, Kim. Like, so, like on DevOps security, right? I kind of look at it as a little bit different, right? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
Heroku is a big part of that, but like, it starts right with GitHub, right? It starts with your like code, where you're building code, right? What are your tools there, right? So, for example, like we've got GitHub, we've got GitHub Advanced Security, right? So you're really trying to build on those layers as you're building the code and doing those checks and balances, right? If it's pen testing, if it's dynamic pen testing, right? So we're just continuing to move up that funnel, right, when it comes to security, right? So you do have to have other tools in place, and you have to look at an entire stack, right? Because really, when you're getting into Heroku, and it's like, if you're in Heroku Shield, you have a lot of security there. But like, is the code secure, right? Are your pen testing and is your code really locked down? So I kind of look at it as separate things, and there are multiple vendors and things you can plug and play to help out with that.
Nice. Okay, I've got a question for Brim. How do you know what AI tools to use, and how do you think about that in terms of minimizing risk and selecting the right tools for your team?
Yeah, sure. I mean, being in technology for a long time, like AI to me, like this time period, the next 5 years is like we're going to see more innovation in the next 5 years than I've seen in 20 years in technology, right? So that's super exciting to me, being in the technology sector. So you have to be willing to take some risk. You've got to be willing to try things out, right? Do a ton of POCs around different tooling, right? Like I've literally seen in the last 6 months going from one tool to the next because hey, this just came out and it's actually we're seeing incremental improvements over what we're using prior, right? So you've got to have the mindset that you're going to change tooling. It's not going to be like, there's going to be one tool and I'm going to use it. It's like, what is the tool going to be and what's going to come next, right? By the end of the year, there could be 5 other tools that I'm going to look at leveraging. So I think having that mindset, where you want to call it R&D or skunkworks, whatever you want to call it, that you've got dedicated bandwidth and people are looking at those tools, right? Trying to get part of them, like if they're early GA, but some tools come out, they're not really fully available, right? So you want to make sure you're getting on a waiting list potentially. So there's just going to be a lot of change in that marketplace. So I'll just say try a lot of things, make sure you're obviously you're doing it with the right mindset, and these are enterprise tools that your data is secure and those types of things. But be willing to pivot and just look at what's out there in the marketplace and be active in discovery around it.
Fantastic. Okay, another question for Gabriel. Is Heroku compatible with any architecture pattern, especially the one found in legacy and mainframe?
Again, a tough one. We'd have to know specifics. I know we have functionality with, like Brim was saying, different providers now, right? GitHub, Cursor. For legacy and mainframe, oof. I mean, which one, right? There's that's a pretty broad question. I'm sorry. I don't mean to dodge it. I would just, for a specific answer, I'd have to know specifics. My apologies on that.
Okay, let's see. So, Brim, future proofing can be challenging in the moment. How is the mindset for building something operational versus enterprise in retrospect versus being in the moment and facing uncertainty?
Yeah, I think it's always a challenge of like going fast right? And getting something that you can like show and get a marketplace, but then also looking at it from, okay, what is the tech debt I'm building, right? Because you build anything, you're building tech debt, right? And you're saying, okay, yeah, I built this thing in a couple of weeks or a month, right? But then taking that and operationalizing it is a different thing, right? So sometimes you need different teams, right? You need a different mindset of like, hey, this team does kind of like early stage trying things out. And you have another team that really looks at it like, does this scale? Is this going to be operational? What does it look like in our runtime environment? What is it going to hit on our dyno capacity, right? Like all those things, like, is this going to be, when you stress test it, is it going to break? So you definitely want to do both, but it's a tough sometimes to balance the speed with making sure that you have code quality right. You don't want to add more defects to your environment. So I think to balance that, and then kind of goes back to making sure you have the right teams and people in place to then have that mindset of like, okay, this is how they go about this process, and kind of sticking to that, right? And then looking for any area where you can streamline development, right? If there's so many AI tools now, if it comes from the requirements gathering to spec-driven design, right? We're going to be able to cut down on the time to build, right? And we will be able to go faster. But as we're going faster, is the code quality there? Is the uptime there? So I think you just got to make sure you're looking at it from a very like holistic perspective, and then making sure you have the right process in place.
Nice. Okay, this was a little bit easier for you. What is one feature or aspect of Heroku that you would miss the most if it was not there?
Is that for Gabriel or me?
Oh, sorry, that's for you, Brim.
No worries. I'm just
Actually,
joking.
both of you. I'm gonna
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
both of you that. Yeah.
I think just I think one of the things, just the ease of managing the dynos and being able to scale, right? I think just minimizing the DevOps capacity is like one of the biggest things for us, right? So that's what I would call out, Kim.
Yeah, I'm gonna plus one to Brim's answer. The curation, right? Some of this stuff, like the value of Heroku is that a lot of this heavy lifting, Heroku takes care of that for you. So yeah, plus one to what Brim is saying.
Okay. And okay, so another question kind of related to this, Brim. You've spoken about the success that you've had with Heroku signature support. Can you share some of the value you and your team have seen with that? Like, why did you choose to invest in that?
Sure. I mean, I think it's one of those things, right? I mean, like especially when you have challenges, right? Like if we have something that comes up, hey, we're seeing this in the environment, hey, we're having this issue here. Being able to like talk to Gabriel, talk to somebody immediately about that issue, right? Immediately have escalation around that is a game changer, right? If you're not engaged with some of your partners, you have very minimal support. You might be sitting around for 4 hours, 8 hours, 24 hours to get some canned response, right? I work with a lot of vendors, right? So that personal touch is really important, especially as you scale, because 15 minutes of downtime can be a very big impact to the organization. And it's also having that ongoing conversation, right? It's not just a support person, yeah, but it's like that ongoing dialogue of like, hey, here's our roadmap, here's what's coming, here's what we need to do, right? We had that whole conversation with the support about going from private to Shield, right? We mapped that out with Signature Support, we mapped it out internally, super smooth, no hiccups. We picked up the platform, moved it over to Shield, different environment, we're up and running, right? So being able to have those thought conversations, I think is really important. Not just with Heroku, but just your core vendors. Make sure you have the right level of support, so you're truly partnered with them and they're not a vendor relationship.
And if I could just
Nice.
add, Brim mentioned it earlier, but being a part of like the customer growth journey for Goosehead, been with them for 2 years, right? We helped you guys launch some pretty cool products and getting to see from start to where we are now and then just the future. Just super fun experience and very valuable.
That's fantastic. Okay, let's do one last question. Brim, this one's for you, but Gabrielle, if you have any thoughts, please add as well. How are you thinking about AI, and how do you see AI enabling faster software development?
Sure. Well, I think, I'm fortunate in the fact that all of my core platforms are either PaaS or SaaS solutions. I do not have any legacy tech right now. So if you haven't done some of those migrations, you got a bunch of legacy tech, I would definitely focus on that, because being in like cloud first on my entire kind of core tech stack enables me to move quicker, right? Like I can turn on features, I can deploy things, test them out. Like I'm getting the latest and greatest from these tooling platforms, when they deliver it, right? A lot of them have aggressive roadmaps is competitive space. So you're seeing that net new stuff come in. And I think too, it's like, goes back to like, okay, looking at it's not just one AI component, right? Like if anybody's done this in any detail, right? Like there's so much work that takes around to actually set up any AI agents or tooling or workflows that, can be operationalized on like enterprise scale, right? Like it's not an easy button, right? But so being intentional about that, right? Hey, here's innovation, taking dedicated time, like, hey, we're gonna focus on innovation. We're gonna look how we can cut down these dev times. How can we cut down these things, right? Doing a hackathon, doing different types of POCs, right? To get some hands-on with it, because you got to see it working. And I think now, it's so much easier now to build a working prototype between Cursor, Lovable, Figma. There's so many AI tools, right? I can build a working model very quickly, right? Within a week or 2 weeks, so they show you kind of what it might look like. So I think there's just so much more flexibility than there was in the past, where it would take a very long time to even build a proof of concept. But now you can build something that looks good and kind of prove it out, and then go take and operationalize it.
And just to add to what Brim's saying, the tools on the front end for the developers are very, very powerful. They're growing every day. They're getting more and more interesting. But then the other side of it is Heroku, like as a platform as a service or any of those, they provide the AI-enabled experience. It expands what's existing, allows you to do more advanced compute. And again, the industry is very dynamic, and we try to address those things. And even as we're talking about here, being anticipatory, being proactive when we see an opportunity.
Yeah, I'll say too, Heroku's got a whole like MCP architecture, right? Model context protocol for running, agent-based things. So that's one of the things we're gonna be really exploring, right? Is like making sure some of our API endpoints that we want to share out in the marketplace are agent focused, right? And work easily with agents, right? As the kind of commerce changes. So that'll be another area that we're really investing in internally, is with building out some of those new architecture components, and Heroku has those. So it gives us the flexibility, right, to then start leveraging that, right? And so it's not a heavy lift on our side. But that requires time, energy, and effort, right? So I think you just got to be very focused on going after those things and realize that sometimes you initially might build something that's going to be a complete failure, right? But you've got to try some things out moving forward.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, Kara, Brim, and Gabriel, for joining us today. This has been a very informative discussion. To all of those who tuned in, we will follow up with a link to this recording, as well as some of the resources that people suggested. So the TEI calculator, as well as more information about Agentforce. Hope to see you all again in a future webinar. Thank you so much.
Kim, I was going to say 2 things really quick. Just I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out and connect with me, happy to have conversations offline, or if you want to follow kind of the Goosehead journey. Also, if you're just interested in learning more about Goosehead, just go to goosehead.com. You can run through an online quote in literally 2 minutes for home or auto. So check it out if you have time.
Fantastic. All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Cam. Thanks, Gabriel. Thanks, Kara.